Welcome back to our session on the disciplined lifestyle. Now, this is session 2 of social discipline, and none other than Annelies Boot, who actually did a sterling job in the previous program, and people saying, please, can we have her back? She is so practical, and we'd love to hear more from her. So, Annelies, welcome back, my Annie. How are you doing?
You. Thank you very much, Doc. I really appreciate it. I appreciate being called back. And I am exceptionally grateful that your listeners and viewers do find something of value in what I have written, because it would be absolutely devastating if we write a book and it does not resonate with people. So I'm grateful. Thank you for that.
Fantastic. Maybe just by means of background, just a brief introduction in terms of what your passions are, what you live for, and what brought us to this book.
So my passion, number one, is people and servicing people, helping people to bring out the best in them, and so on. I do believe, and in my journey, I have come across many people who get stuck along the way. And it is not as if I haven't been stuck along the way. I've been stuck many times. But somehow, I think through my upbringing, through my parents, through my background, and just my belief and maybe just my character and my personality, I've managed to get myself out of that, remotivate myself and get myself back on track. And it would be a shame if you don't share that with people, and perhaps, they say if you save one person, you've saved, you've done your job. So I really do hope that through my journey, I can inspire somebody else or just give them a ray of hope that they can get themselves out of a rut somewhere along the way.
Absolutely. You remember the story of Leo Bascali that was walking on the beach, and he basically saw thousands of starfish lying on the beach. And he found himself, he just wanted to make a difference, and he started throwing them back into the ocean. And the older couple came across and said, what are you doing? There's millions of them. You can't make a difference. And he looked him in the face. He took the one starfish, he flung it in the sea and says, it's making a difference for this one.
It's very true. You can't save the whole world. And I do believe that one should start with oneself if you want to be the change. You can't tell other people what to do if you haven't walked the road yourself. And that's why my message today and what we're going to discuss today is all about where do you start, and how should you look after yourself to make sure that people don't take advantage of you as a person. And yes, I do believe that I've changed many people's lives. I've had an impact on many people's lives. And as a former teacher, I think the thing I appreciate the most is when a past pupil comes back to me and says, ma'am, you changed my life in that way, or ma'am, you touched my life in that way. And perhaps it wasn't in that specific year when I taught them, but it might have been something I said in a classroom, and years later it resonated with them, and they remember that. So that really is, to me, what makes it worth my while, and why I love helping people.
Those testimonies are timeless. And that's really what it's about. That when they come, they also sometimes come at a time that we need it most, to know that what we did was not in vain. Well, Annelies, we are in the book. Here it is, The Disciplined Lifestyle. We are in social discipline. Tonight, I'm going to look at page 197. And I found that your section 3 title was so grabbing. Self-care is not selfish. Wow. Talk to us about that.
Well, they say that the way that people treat you is a reflection of the way that they see you. And the way that you allow people to treat you is how you see yourself.
Okay.
And sometimes we sit back and we think, why am I the victim? Why, that last week we discussed the victor and the victim mentality. Why am I always the victim? Why do these things happen to me? We can so often fall into that pit. And I think it starts with the fact that we think that we need to do so much for other people that we sometimes forget about ourselves. Now, a good friend of mine always used to say, or still says, that you cannot pour from an empty cup.
True.
You cannot offer somebody else a sip of water if your cup is empty. And that is, to me, actually the crux of the matter, is you need to fill yourself up constantly. You need to replenish yourself. And you need to stop sometimes and do a real hard reality check of where you are in life and what your goals are, and are your goals and so on being met, and are your needs being met. And if it isn't, you need to make certain sacrifices or put certain steps in place and so on. And that is basically why I wrote that chapter in the book, is because you cannot set goals. You cannot move on in life if you yourself is totally depleted and lacking of any nourishment for other people.
Now, let me ask a question. Can I just ask a question here? Now, you said a person will reflect and they'll come to a point. Is it advisable for this person to do it by themselves, or is it advisable to basically do it with a friend or a mentor? Will that maybe assist in the process? I don't know, because it's self-care. What is your take on that?
I think self-care is exactly what it says. It might be a two-pronged approach, but I think it starts with yourself. When you realize, I'm tired,
okay,
I cannot anymore, I'm being, overshared in a way, there's too many people demanding my attention. That's where it starts. Nobody tells you that you are tired. You know by yourself you are tired. And it is at that moment that you need to put measures in place to get things back on track. And yes, then surely if you do have a mentor or a confidant or somebody that you can talk to, it's good to go to that person and perhaps just, sit down and have a cup of tea and discuss things. It's always good. It's good to have that mirror which they can just hold up for you and say, this is what's happening in your life. So that's good. But also, I think it is good to have those inner conversations with yourself, because those are the ones that are the tough ones that we avoid when we go and sit and talk to somebody else, and they perhaps just tell us what we want to hear and not what we need to hear. So sometimes we know the answer. We just have to sit still and do that inner reflection.
Nobody likes looking in that mirror and facing yourself. That's just one of it. But then again, you have the choice, like you said last week, either you're a victim or you're a victor, and it's between these two that you move on. So help us now with the practical part of, you've decided I need some self-care. What would you do?
Right. So every person has got basic needs. And those basic needs are things like your personal hygiene, your clothing that you dress in that should be appropriate, and your medical conditions, perhaps if you have that needs to be looked after. And often we find that those are the ones that are neglected first. So you will perhaps pick up that you don't feel like taking a shower today, or you just don't want to brush your teeth, or you're okay if your hair hasn't been washed for a week or so on. And so sometimes when the personal hygiene starts being neglected, that is one of the first signs when you realize that I'm heading for a problem, or not necessarily a problem, but there's a red flag that's going up.
And especially,
and then as I said,
and especially, Annelies, if the person happens to be living by themselves, because if there's an absence of other people, if there's an absence of you not looking in the mirror, here's the truth. To not shower, to neglect yourself, not brush your hair is so much easier because there's no one around that you have to face, look at, and therefore it's easier for the person who lives by themselves in isolation to be absorbed into this. It's like a vortex that just sucks you in. Isn't that true?
Absolutely. There's nobody that says, go take a shower, you smell, brush your teeth, comb your hair. Nobody holds you accountable. It's that thing that you have to do for yourself. Then, to dress in appropriate clothing. I mean, I know people that spend days in the same tracksuit pants or in their pajamas or so on. And maybe COVID taught us that was okay, but that was COVID. We passed that now. So now we now need to get out of that hole, and we need to get ourselves back on track. People tend to forget to eat, or they eat the wrong things, or they go to alcohol. So there's many, many things how people can neglect themselves, which they don't actually realize. And the problem comes in is when all these things happen at the same time, because then your physical state, your mental state, your emotional state, all of that just fall flat. And it's then like ripping the foundation from under a house and expecting the house still to stand. It won't stand. It simply is not possible for a house to stand without a foundation. And it's exactly the same with people. If we don't have the basic necessities that we need that make us, human, and that make us acceptable in society and make us want to go out and so on, then it simply, there is no motivation for us then to do that, and it's important for us to actually get into that. So for me, I do believe that there are people who suffer self neglect because of perhaps a brain injury, a medical injury, right? So they're not fully aware of the fact that they are not looking after themselves. So that is a possibility. It could be that people are suffering from dementia. It could be a mental illness. So those are things that actually do happen and it occur. And that's why it's important, if you have a family member like that, to make sure that that person has a support person. And that's why many times these people end up in institutions or hospitals or care facilities where they can be looked after so that their basic needs are met. So we're not talking about just that today.
So what we're saying is not necessarily bad for a person to go to a place where they can get help. It might just be what they need at that point in time to actually get a turnaround for change.
That is the self-care. That is to realize I'm in trouble and I need help and I need assistance, and then to actually seek it, or to go to somebody and say, look, I'm in this rut, I'm stuck. What can I do? And for them then to realize that if those basic things are sorted out, then the person will be back on track and ready to face the world again, and the problem will be solved. So that's that point of it. The other one is where we have people whose how can I say, where their mental illness is influenced by physical illness. Okay. So the physical illness will be, for instance, where they don't have energy levels, right? So they don't feed themselves well, so there's no energy, for instance, or they are just very low emotionally. People who have problems with attention, paying attention, a very short attention span, or who tend to forget things. People who show weak organizational skills won't be able to get themselves out of a situation like that. So those are the inputs that I want to give to say this is where you actually they need help from somebody from the outside. But you need to reach out then to people to say, listen, I need help, and for people then to actually motivate you. And it's possible, but you can also motivate yourself. And this is what we're going to look at today, is how in the self-care sector, how you can actually then go and motivate yourself. The thing is, if you don't motivate yourself, if you don't have that self-care, then all these things lead to self-criticism.
Okay.
And
I must say,
no.
For the readers on page 198, there's this schedule that's in the book, or a framework that I found very interesting. This often manifests in self-criticism. So take us through, for us to understand those various stages, because I think the person listening into this say, hold on, I would hate to be caught in the area of self-criticism, but I don't know whether it's good or bad, but let's find out what the result would be. Take us through.
Yes, so self-criticism is basically mental self-harm. So where you have self-harm, where you take an instrument and you cause damage to yourself, to your physical body, the self-criticism is the mental part of this.
Okay.
So this is where you have negative self-talk, for instance. So let's say, for instance, you continuously criticize yourself, and you would say, I didn't get that job, so I must be stupid. Or I didn't get into that relationship because I'm fat, or I cannot go to, well, fat is, I say I'm fat, but let's say overweight, but we don't talk nicely to ourselves. We don't look in the mirror and go, oh, I'm slightly overweight. We look at ourselves and go, oh, you're so fat, So it's a nasty way.
Big psychology in what you just said, because you see the very same person making the same comment, but in a different way, has a way different meaning. looking at yourself saying, hey, I'm slightly overweight. But the moment you get that threshold of I'm fat, that's a negative. So we
Yeah,
literally you have to face the truth, but how you say it yourself has got a big um, role to play in terms of whether it's criticism or whether it's motivation.
absolutely. And when it's I'm overweight, there's still something that can be done to it. I can put a plan in place and I can fix the problem. But when it is I'm fat, it's almost hopeless, and you've just given up already. That kind of thing. So how you speak to yourself is extremely important. The same goes for I'm ugly. And who tells us we're ugly? Who says that we are these things? It's society, it's social media that shows us, all kinds of videos and reels and images of what we should look like and what we should wear and all those things. And my question is just who says it's right? I'm a boho type of person. I like bohemian clothes, right? So other people like vintage clothes. That doesn't make one of us better than the other. It simply is a matter of taste. And, you know, so never ever let your decisions of who you are and what you like and your preferences, don't let that be dictated and predicted by social media and by society. It's an absolute big no-no. Um, Self-talk like, I'm not going to attempt this, let's say, park run because I always fail. I won't be successful. So you've given up before you've even started. I have no friends. Well, yes, you have no friends because nobody wants to be around somebody that's moping all the time. Nobody wants to be around somebody that has no energy, that's never in the mood to go out, that's never in the mood to go over to them and socialize. That's why you have friends, is to socialize, not just sit around with. So it's important that you have positive self-talk. And many times people who have been in relationships, especially narcissistic relationships, they or codependent relationships, they turn around and they have this idea of I can't do anything right, simply because they have been told so many times that everything you do is wrong and so on. So you turn it over and you say, well, I can't do anything right, so I'm not even going to attempt it.
Mm-hmm.
Then we often feel guilty when people ask us to do something, whether it's in your personal capacity or at work, and we turn around and we say, no, sorry, I can't do this. Or like we said last week, no is also a full sentence. But, if you always have to say yes to something, you're going to be overburdened and you're going to be tired. So I always think it's the way in which that no is communicated. You can say to somebody, sorry, I cannot help you, without giving a reason, without having to lie or coming up with a far-fetched excuse as to why you can't do something. Just say, I'm sorry, I'm going to take out some time this weekend for myself. I won't be able to help you, but next time, please do keep me in mind. I might be up for it then.
In fact,
So a little bit of hope.
Let me give you an example. I've got somebody in the team that actually has announced and said, guys, for the next 3 months, I am going to remove myself from social media because I'm in a self-discovery journey. I want to just work on myself, look at myself, and therefore for the next 3 months, please, I'm not rude, but it's a pre-planned process of the next 3 months. And on the day, at the end of the 3-month period, that person came back and said, I'm back. 3 months are over and the journey was there. So I thought, what maturity to actually communicate to people up front. Now that's what we
Oh,
will
that's the
get.
self-care.
Yeah, that's self-care. That really is beautiful. Okay.
It's a mental self-care. And then I just want to say to people, there's nothing wrong with saying no. You know yourself, you know your goals, you know your energy levels. If you really are overburdened, don't feel guilty because of a friendship or a family or a work commitment or so on, that you have to always say yes. You can really, really take the time and think about it and say, I really cannot make it. Even if you've already said yes to a commitment, sometimes we have to RSVP to events and it's months before the event. But then life happens. And just before the event, we might not have the funds to attend it, or we might not have the energy to attend it or something. And I do feel that that is then your right and your prerogative to take that self-care and say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to make it. And if people then want to be annoyed with you or angry with you or so on, then, that's up to them. It's I don't want to say it's got nothing to do with you, but again, the way in which you communicate it should then be in such a way that you, will be, that your apology will be accepted. And here I want to say, don't lie about your reason. We tend to forget that social media is very powerful. So now we say, I cannot attend this because I am going to stay at home. And then you post on social media, or you check in social media at a casino or another event or so on, and you forget that people can see that, and so your credibility and that it falls flat, and that leads to all new kinds of problems. So don't lie about it. No is a full sentence.
I want to give you an example of what happened to me this week. As you know, I'm an author, and somebody in America I inspired to actually write a book came back to me and said, I'm now ready. Would you like to go through the first draft? What a decision, because right now I'm overwhelmed in terms of writing another book and with other priorities. And I sort of softened the truth a bit by saying, you know what, I'm not an editor. Maybe someone else can edit your book for you, because I don't normally look after that area. However, just listening to you, here's the truth. I'm overwhelmed, and I'm actually not in a position right now to take responsibility to go through your first draft, because I just cannot add that to my things to do. And I think that's the encouragement that even I need to admit to myself. Why soften the truth? If you're overwhelmed, you just are. Just state what it is, because then you don't have to tell another lie to maintain what you've tried to say. Do you find that helpful?
We're so quick to take selfies and post it on social media and show the world, what we're busy with and who we are and so on. Yet when we have to speak it, we're very shy to do it. Yeah. But what you also could have said, Doc, is that, I will not be giving you the best service that you deserve, or your book the best service or respect that your work deserves. So I'm going to recommend somebody else if you have a second person in mind and so on. So that also would have shown the person that you respect them enough to tell them the truth, and that you respect their work enough, but that you are willing to come on board and give them perhaps another a lead or so on. So that's another way in which you also could have done that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You should read my book.
I am. Go for it.
Then the other one that we self-criticize ourselves so often with is, I should be happy all the time. We think we live in La La Land, and that, life is a song, and we should wake up and sing, oh, what a beautiful morning every day, and, what a wonderful world, and so on. And that's not true. Life is about the ups and the downs. It's about the balances. It's about the negatives and the positives. So here I want to give you a little picture in my mind how I overcome this.
Okay.
I know life happens, and I know life is not always pleasant. It's about balance. If life was not in balance, we would be living in La La Land, but we aren't. So I always think of a wheel. So for me, when I am sitting at the top of the wheel, my attitude is one of gratitude. Okay. So I sit at the top of my wheel. I imagine I'm sitting at the top of the wheel, and I realize that I cannot move forward if the wheel does not move, right? And I don't want to move backwards. I want to go forward. So in order for my wheel to move forward, I will have to change position, and I'm going down. So where I'm sitting at the top now, and I've got a view of the world, and my life is beautiful and it's splendid, and I hear the birds singing and everything's okay. When my wheel starts turning, I'm moving down. And my life starts changing, and pretty soon I will be at the bottom. And when I'm in the bottom, I'm going to go through the muck and the mud, and probably have a spanner in the works somewhere. So I might even end up with a puncture, and that is the not so nice about life, right? And it's coming. It's the balance. I want you to think about this. In order for your wheel then to still move forward, you will have to move that wheel forward again, and you will then come out of that muck. So when I'm at the bottom, I always look at the top or at better days, or I look back in hope.
Yes.
And I always think, you know what, it will go better. Life is all about balance. I can't forever stay at the bottom. I have to move forward. So I walk the road, and it's tough. It's really not easy. Life is not for sissies. And you have to be tough sometimes not sometimes, all the times, with a self-care. That at the bottom part is where you really do the self-care, where you look after yourself emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually. And then you will see when you put those things in place, you start moving out of that. And before you realize it, you're back at the top again.
Okay, now
when you're at the top,
let's go for the moment. Say I'm at the bottom of the wheel, and I'm looking at page 198 in the speaks. But what do you do to motivate yourself from that bottom position to get to the top again? Take us through some of those examples and help us with the practicality of how you do that.
Well, I think when you're right at the bottom, it's important to really take a good hard look at yourself.
Okay.
Because there's a reason why you're at the bottom. There's a lesson to learn. If you don't learn a lesson, it means that all of this movement, all of this pain, all of this agony, emotional turmoil was for nothing. So, while you're there, turn it into a teaching lesson, and the next time there might be some pitfalls that you're going to avoid in future, because believe me, that wheel is coming down again and you're going to be at the bottom once again. That's how we move forward. So some of the self-care things that I always like to bring to people, and I'm going to give you a couple now. You really, are not supposed to, or I can't say you're not supposed to, but it's not that you have to sit and run down the list and do each and every one of them. You find in the list what resonates with you. It might be one thing. It might be three things. Today, it might be one. Next week, it might be three. So it's a flexible suggestion. So first of all, I say, stop lying to yourself. Oh, we love lying to ourselves. So the first thing that you can do is to stop that, face the truth. It is what it is. And the only way you can fix something that's broken is by knowing where it's broken and how you would like it to be. So stop the lying. Secondly, let's say, for instance, it was a relationship that went wrong, a friendship that broke apart, or a relationship, or whatever the case might be, but it's about a relationship between people. It's okay to create some distance between you and the person in that relationship.
That's fine.
Because while you are in that, it just adds to your emotional, your emotional anguish. So create some distance, right? Doesn't have to be permanent, but it's good to bring it in. Then if it's somebody that actually, said nasty things to you and you were on the receiving end, don't take those labels yourself. If you don't believe those things about yourself, you don't have to take the label. They always say that if somebody offers you a gift and you don't take the gift is not yours, it's still theirs. The same goes with an insult. You don't have to take an insult. You don't have to take a label. If somebody says it, the fact that they say it doesn't mean it's true. Get a set bedtime for yourself. Sleep is extremely powerful. So rest for the body, for the soul, for your thoughts. If you're like me, I'm an overthinker. So I solve the world every night at 3:00. I'm awake and I solve all the problems in the world. I don't get to doing them, but I've got lots of plans and ideas. So set a bedtime for yourself and stick to it, where you go to bed every night.
Now, even if you don't feel like it, hold on. Let's say you're not tired. What would you do? Would you actually physically put yourself in bed and keep yourself busy with maybe some puzzles? Or what would you do?
I would get a bedtime routine. So maybe I'll take a shower or a nice bath, for instance. I might make myself a a cup of tea, so I'll make a little ritual about it. So I feel special enough that I invest that time in myself. I might find a good book to read that I enjoy about a topic, because how many times do we read? And I'm not talking about social media. I'm not talking about an audible book. I'm talking about a physical book to actually lie in bed and read this book.
True.
It could be that you journal. So get a journal and write down things that you were grateful for in that day, things that you would like to sort out. The lying part, write down what is it that's troubling you, how you would like to sort it out. Write a letter to somebody. You don't have to mail it.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say, for instance, that relationship that went wrong, you can write a letter to the person.
Something comes to mind. You know what? You know that one of my mentors, Dr. John C. Maxwell, actually ends off every day by asking, what were the 2 things that I did today that added value? But from what you've just said, I'm now going to add one more question to that check back. I'm going to ask myself, did you lie to yourself today? I'm going to do that because I just feel checking back on what was successful. But the truth is, even in saying that, when I answer the question, did you lie to yourself today? I might even have to investigate whether the 1 or 2 things that I just said were a figment of my imagination and weren't really true. But I said it so that I felt that I'd achieved something. But this question, did you maybe lie to yourself today, is powerful. So I thank you. I'm taking that out of the conversation. Continue.
I would add to that, and I would actually say, I wouldn't ask myself, did you lie to yourself today? Because it's very easy to say yes or no, and that creates another lie. I would confront myself and I would say, where did you lie to yourself today?
Nice.
And it's not just lying about something, it's also not being true to yourself. It's that saying yes when you should have said no, because then you're also lying to yourself. It's that saying I'm fat when you could have said, I'm a little bit overweight, I need to do something about that, and so on. So, sorry for tweaking your input, but that's why you had me on board.
That's why we're there. Go for it.
Yes. I would, okay, we were talking about bedtime routine. Now let's get back to what things you can put in place in order to do your self-care.
Mm-hmm.
I would seek out things that interest me, whether it is a physical activity, whether it's an art activity, a musical activity, going to the theater, and I would start attending that. It doesn't have to be, there are many, let me first finish my sentence. It doesn't have to be things that cost money all the time. Mm. There are many flea markets that are free of charge. Just walking around at a flea market and looking at art, for instance. You don't have to go to an art gallery and pay for entrance fee. You can go to a market and just look at art that's available there. You can listen to musicians, buy yourself your lunch at a market, for instance, and listen to musicians there and be inspired by people who are at that moment enjoying the zest of life, and think, you might look at them and think, oh my goodness, these people are so happy, but you also deserve that, and you have taken the first step to get yourself out of the house, out of your environment that depresses you, and you've taken the step to do self-care.
There's definitely power. I just want to add this. There's definitely power in music. It doesn't matter who you are, which country you are, what nationality you are. Music is powerful, and it can actually either lift the mood. Mostly it does, and also be careful if you listen to the wrong thing at the wrong time. For a small portion of your life, it actually could become a bit depressing. But mostly, absolutely, music is powerful to move people. Okay, what else? Let's start landing this, because this is so much for me to absorb. I'm like, oh my gosh, and at least my head is pumping here. Go for it.
3 o'clock tomorrow morning, you can send me an SMS. Hey, Annie, are you awake? Let's discuss the taking over the world. Pinky and the brain, that reminds me now of that all of a sudden. And then I want to say something to people that have suffered loss. Mm-hmm. If you have suffered loss, you can often be so absorbed in other people that you do so many things for them that you forget to look after yourself. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I think is important is for us to grieve the life that we thought we would have with somebody, if we go through divorce or being widowed or a relationship that broke up, or maybe a child that we lost, or a family member or so on. So I think it's important that people should realize that that loss, that the life, that the dreams that you have or had is no longer going to come to fruition with that specific person. That's very, very, very important, because that's part of the not lying to yourself, and accepting. So, so I think to put in place for yourself a journal or a vision board is very, very helpful. So what I'm going to offer your viewers and listeners and so on is, it's not in the book, but I'm willing to share a document of a journal, a template with your viewers, and I'll send it to you, and then maybe you can post it in the link where you can download it and just make a couple of copies for yourself. You don't have to journal every single day. You can journal as you feel like it.
Okay.
Make some photocopies for yourself, and then fill it in as you go along, and where you feel that you would like to make some contributions. Journaling is a lovely way of focusing your attention on the hard parts in your life, because it's a bit of self introspection, what you say as self ownership,
self-reflection, self-discovery. That's really what it's about. Yeah. Okay.
Basically that. Yeah. And then I want to close off by saying, Doc, that it's okay if you have had a bad day. It's like I say, we don't live in La La Land, and life isn't always pretty. And sometimes you're not in charge of things that happen to you. Life just deals you a backhand, and you have to deal with it. But if you are not competent, if you're not able to look after yourself and your emotions and your physical self, then you're going to struggle. You're going to run into some trouble. And that's it. To accept that life is not always pretty, I think that's a hard lesson for all of us to learn. Accept that it's okay to make mistakes. You're allowed to make mistakes. People around you make them all the time, and you forgive them. And so forgive yourself. If you've made a mistake, say, oh, made a mistake, should have taken that road, not this road, should have taken this decision, made that decision. But you know what? I've learned from it. Next time I'll know better. Be kind to yourself. We are so harsh. And then if you have a setback on something, it doesn't mean that you're a failure. It's just a temporary setback. Learn the lesson and continue. Make adjustments and continue with it. If you're tired, if you can't anymore, if you know yourself best, it's good to call a time out. It's good to take time out, whether it is a day or two at work, to take leave. And I want to say something. People always joke about it, but I promise you it's true. By working 24/7, nobody's going to build you a monument. The day that you leave, the day that you perhaps pass away, the day that you resign, I promise you, they're already looking for your replacement.
That's true.
So take care of yourself. Take a break from work. Don't work 24/7. It's extremely important, and have that difficult conversation with your one-up or your employer. And then I want to remind you that, and this you can write on your mirror or somewhere, no one and no situation is ever perfect. There is no such thing. Well, maybe perhaps a sunset, orange sunset against a silhouetted tree.
Yes,
but that's for free.
Every time.
Yes. But nothing in life is perfect. So it's okay to make mistakes. And then I want to close off by saying that you are stronger than you think you are. There's always that little bit that you can dig deeper with. You just have to become quiet, take time out, and find that little bit inside yourself. It is there. And remember, you can't pour from an empty cup. Take time for yourself.
Well, there you have it. This is Annelies Boot. She's talking about social discipline in the book, The Disciplined Lifestyle. And there you have it. You are worth it. And never give up on yourself. I can hear that. I can hear the words of the great leader that we had in Britain say, never, never, never surrender. I can just yell Churchill. So Annalise, from
Yes.
myself and all the listeners tonight, I want to thank you so much for your contribution. And yes, it's not the end of any, because there's still many other sections to go through. So catch you next time when we do Social Discipline 3, but tonight for Social Discipline 2. And yes, in the link, I will also send the gratitude journal from Annie, so that you can be practical and start saying thank you for a brilliant day. And remember, you're worth it. To all of you, take care.
Right, Doc. Thank you.